thank you for joining me for another episode where I am talking with some of the composers off my upcoming album, Delta Waves. If you're interested in learning more about Delta Waves, feel free to go to andrewhostler.com/Delta Waves. There you can find track listing, more talks with composers, upcoming performances that include the music, and more. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, so we both went to BG. You're still at BG,
I'm
but
still at PG, still an
yeah,
undergrad.
both went there for our. I went there for my undergrad, and we would have met how many years ago?
I believe 2 years ago because I was a freshman when we did the MAT program for like the high school
Hmm.
academy band. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were the yes, we were both in the musicianship and advanced pedagogy program through
Mm,
the College of Music, and we did
right.
um, the high school academy band. We were both the
Mhm.
saxophone instructors for the high
We
school
were,
band.
which I
Um,
was very confused on why I was put there because I told my supervisor, Dr. Martin, I was like, I played saxophone in the marching band, and she took that as I played the saxophone, and then she just slapped me onto that saxophone section. I was like, okay.
well, I thought it worked very, very well, and then
It was fun.
I found them. I found some of your compositions and was asked if you were interested in writing something for saxophone, and that's how "Back When the Tiger Smoked" came to be.
Right.
So, do you
Um,
want to talk a little about that process, how we first started talking about it, the compositional process behind the piece?
yeah, so I think I posted something on Facebook about like my newly made piece on SoundCloud, and then I think you saw it and asked me to compose something for you too.
Yeah, it
So
was a flute something piece, wasn't it?
yeah, it was a flute, guitar, and piano piece. I composed that
That
like
was it.
back when I was like a senior in high school, and I was super proud of it. I was like, yeah, first published work. And then I thought I was a big shot at the time, but I was so wrong. Anyways, but then I think at the time you said you were trying to get other composers to make like mythological kind of themed pieces. So I thought, hey, I love my Korean heritage. I'm going to make a piece about my Korean um, heritage. And so back when the tiger smoked, like the title itself is how we start every old stories in Korea. It's like similar to Once Upon a Time, but for us it's like back when the tiger smoked, blah 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 blah. So I thought that'd be a good title to begin with. That was actually the very first thing that I came up with before I even started on the piece. I was like, I have this title, I think it's coolest. And then so back when the tiger smoked is based on a creation story of Korea where a bear and a tiger tries to become humans to escape their like boring lives of being an animal. So the first movement kind of just opens up the characters of the bear and the tiger. It's like kind of unraveling through the clouds at the very beginning, and then we get into the theme of the tiger, where it's like a lot more like aggressive and a lot more rhythmical. And then we slowly fade into the bear's theme, where it's a little more like, I guess, in a way, a little more like feminine. I want to be careful saying that, but it's very more lyrical and melodical. And then the second movement, we get into the cave because they both are instructed by the gods to go into a cave, eat garlic for 100 days in the cave without seeing the sun, which I don't know why, but if
If
anybody
that
wants to be.
works.
So obviously, the bear is an herbivore. Well, not herbivore, omnivore, I'm sorry. And she can do that. But the tiger, being an obvious carnivore, finds it extremely excruciating and difficult. So that's where the end of the second movement comes in, where he just his anger just keeps on building up, his anguish. It's like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to just like disobey my terms of nature? And then he just runs out. And the moment that he runs out is the third movement because it mixes um, kind of his disappointment in him running out because there were only a couple of days left for him, but he just couldn't do it. And then just all of his mouth burning from the garlic too. And then that Ataka goes into the fourth movement where the bear finally meets her 100 days deadline. And then she becomes human and she becomes a beautiful female human. And then she marries the god that actually gave her that opportunity to become human. And then they both have a child. And then his name is Tangun, and he chooses the Korean peninsula as the land that will prosper, yada yada yada, and that's how Korea became. And because of that, I put like the Korean folk song Arirang like a little bit in the mix of the fourth movement, just so it's more evident that it's Korea.
Yeah, yeah, just like you said, I've always been fascinated by pieces that are based on mythology. I've performed a couple, but I feel like it's just a medium of composition that really hasn't been explored that much. So, when we first started talking, that was the first thing that came to my mind, and no, it's a fantastic piece, and I love how evident the two themes going through it are. They're both notated out in the first movement, like the tiger's theme and the bear's theme, and you can really hear those throughout the entire piece, and that I really really like that.
Thank you.
So you said that you play the saxophone. How was it writing for an instrument that you play? Was it different than writing for, say, a flute or an instrument that you don't play?
Yeah, so I still find it much easier to much easier and both most difficult to write for a saxophone, because I found it easier to find the notes and find the right fingerings for things, because I could just like finger it through and be like, okay, this will work. This won't be too difficult. Granted, you were a performance major, so I didn't really think you'll have a problem with it. But at the time, like as a new composition major, I just didn't know a lot about extended techniques. So that whole second movement was like an entire adventure for me. Like I look on the notation of it now, I'm like, wow, I struggled with this. But then at the time I stayed up so many nights just trying to figure out how to make this sound good. It's like, is this innovative enough, or does this sound okay? And then yeah.
Well, yeah, I remember one day after an academy band rehearsal, you asked me just to like make random noises on the saxophone, and I showed you a little like what I've kind of called inverse flutter.
Yeah.
That you used a lot throughout the piece. You kind of alternated with stomping in that second movement. But no, I remember. No, I think the second movement works very, very well, and it explores a lot of different sounds and different noises that the tenor saxophone can make.
Yeah. I wish I could have really integrated, now that I think back on it, like integrated the stomps in a more reasonable way. That's like the one regret that I kind of have, along with many other ones. Like I think now that I look at it, it's like, oh, this could be a lot less awkward if I just wrote it like this a little bit differently. But
well, I think it works very, very well, and with the low notes happening in the piano and over and over again, I think it's very, very effective. Like from an aural standpoint. So what has been your experience writing for saxophone? Have you before that had you written for the saxophone? Afterwards, have you written for the saxophone at all?
Before that, I haven't written for, that was my very first like official saxophone piece that I've ever written. So far, I've like only arranged things for saxophone, but that's like different from like actually considering like the ranges of the saxophone and the different things that saxophones can do. And I mean, I don't think it's really a stretch to say that BGSU is a saxophone school.
Yeah, we have a lot of saxophonists.
We have a lot of saxophones, and we have
really
a lot of
like
people
working with
writing
composers.
for it.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like we're very good friends with the composition studios.
Yeah, which I'm not complaining. I think it's a very versatile instrument, so I'm very happy that I got to experience most of it. I'm just very glad that I wasn't, I guess, exposed to composing for it in a more jazz styled way, because I think that's very that's like the stereotypical saxophone equals jazz kind of a thing, and I don't want everybody to start associating that. I just want people to see like saxophone as saxophone. And that's kind of why I'm like trying to write more saxophone pieces, even though I'm not that good at it, just to give more like contemporary non-jazz kind of saxophone pieces. I think that's important.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, especially with the tenor saxophone, which is with this album. I like the tenor saxophone quite a lot. Right. And so often, even from a very young age, when I first started playing tenor, the tenor saxophone is a jazz instrument. That's all it is. If you want to play classical, you play soprano and alto. And then bari is kind of a cross between the two. So that's why a lot of these I chose these works kind of to show that the tenor saxophone is more than just jazz. Some of these pieces do have jazz influence, but it's not all jazz. And a lot of them still just treat the tenor as its own instrument and show the tenor for its beauty and its versatility, just like composers would do writing for the soprano or writing for the alto. Like it doesn't have to be like a different thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
Um,
it's fantastic. I before I like met you and like saw everything that you could do with the saxophone, I didn't realize how versatile it was. I was like, oh my god, you can do what with the saxophone keys, and you can make what sounds with this.
yeah,
So
we can make a lot of noises. There are many, many, many books written about the various noises the saxophone can make.
ridiculous.
Yeah, we like just to play the saxophone in ways I don't think Adolf Sax intended.
Probably, which maybe he'll like it if he saw it.
Who knows? Exactly. If he were alive, maybe he would enjoy it. Um, but no, and I mean that's one thing I really appreciate about the piece from because you sent over a couple movements at a time. I didn't get like the
Mm,
full piece until the very end, but and that was something I saw and was very evident. You were treating the saxophone like a classical instrument, and I loved that, and
mm,
I really appreciated that.
mm,
And then we did. I premiered the piece at the North America Saxophone Alliance Region 5 conference
mm,
at Marion University, and then we later played at BG
mm,
at a student composer forum.
mm.
Um, so we were able to get a couple performances out of the piece, and I'll be recording it with Dr. Ames now for the CD.
So excited to hear it.
Yeah, it's gonna be great to put together, and also you're a pianist, so the piano part lies very well on the instrument as well. It seems like.
Thank you.
Um, so I think how was that? Is would you say that that's true? Because you do play piano, correct?
Right. Um, I'm not a very good piano player myself, but I knew kind of like how I said, I knew like what to do with the saxophone, like
Mm-hmm.
what would be difficult or not. I did put like a couple of difficult places
Mm-hmm.
in that piece, but yeah, I think it was much easier to do like compose for the two instruments that I knew relatively
Mm-hmm.
well than like just doing random other ones that I had no idea what they
Mm-hmm.
were capable of.
Yes. Yeah, and I think both parts do lie very well. The pianists I've played it with have seem to think that from what I've gathered that it seems to lie very well on that instrument, and everything on the
Hmm.
saxophone works very very well. So, do you have anything else you wanted to share about the piece, or anything else
Um,
that comes to mind that anyone might be interested to learn or to know?
um, I'm composing more pieces for the Korean mythology things
Mm.
and anything Korean, so tune in for more things that I make, I guess.
Can you talk about any of the pieces yet, or at least give us
mm,
instrumentations?
so I'm thinking of making this piece. I don't remember the flower's name, but there's this one flower that's kind of translates to the grandma flower, and
Okay.
it's a really pretty kind of hairy, like leaning down kind of a purple flower whose story lies in like kind of a sad story about a grandma and her three daughters, where the two daughters ended up abandoning their mother, but the third
Mm-hmm.
daughter, when she tried to take care of her mother, like the mother was already dead, and then in the place that she was dead, that flower, the grandma flower, like came to sprout, and then I wanted to kind of like base it off of that and kind of make it a little more like a sadder piece, I guess, in a way. Maybe like a string quartet, but no promises.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very excited to hear that. I think the idea of not only the idea of like composing about mythology is I don't think used that often, but the idea of
Mm,
Korean mythology, especially to my knowledge, this is the only piece I'm aware of,
mm.
like like a Western art piece that utilizes that.
Yeah, I wanted to like really give like different perspective of the Korean culture because so far when people hear Korea, they instantly think of K-pop, and it's
Yeah.
not bad. It's like we got some like publicity, and I'm very happy about it. But I also want people to know like there's like so much like rich cultural aspect within our music that not a lot of them like has been like out there because um like Chinese music and Japanese music and their cultures are prevalent in the media,
Mm-hmm.
but pretty much the only kind of famous Korean publicity that we get is like K-pop.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to like give more influences on that if I could.
Yeah, to try and be a spokesperson and
Yeah.
share that, and I think
Mm,
that that's fantastic, and hopefully through this album people can learn more about this piece specifically.
mm,
So if with that being said, if you're interested in hearing recordings of this piece, I believe recordings of both the Marian University and the composer forum should be available on YouTube and SoundCloud. So if you're interested in checking out either of those, thank you so much for being with me today and chatting a little about the piece. And if you're interested in learning more about the album, like I said, you can go to andrewhosser.com/deltawaves, find out a ton of information about the album, how you could support the album, and so much more. So thank you all.